Hi everyone, my name is Mayur Patel. I'm from Walsall Council and I'm going to deliver some presentation on how to do manual accessibility audits. It also carries a lot of my past experiences working for for a charity which used to provide services for government services to do accessibility audits and to raise issues, tickets issues. We have also done some work in past with the government and as well as with high street banks such as HSBC and so on. So I'm trying to um, ponder over on how to make it this best. So what I've tried to do is I've tried to comprehensively guide out what are the issues that you can test and what are the issues that you cannot test using automation. Obviously, what I did find out was that to carry out a full WCAG comprehensive audit, you have to include some forms of manual testing. At best, currently, it's about 30% automation, 70% manual. And what I tried to do find out was also if there are any tools that I use. And I also looked into different communities and see if there are other tools that people use as well. I also find out that mobile testing is very, very important now because from WCAG 2.1, there was a very huge emphasis on for mobile testing. 2.2 also emphasized on mobile testing, and WCAG 3.0 is going to emphasize very heavily on the mobile testing. And what I did find out were some really interesting tools that I've used in past. Andy, an amazing bookmarklet, accessibility insights, available both as a desktop macOS app as well as extensions. Headings map, it's one of my lifesavers, so I don't have to go into DOM. I can just bring out the heading structure directly using this extension. Color contrast analyzer, TPGI, one of my favorite one because it really really helps me. Selectors Hub, this is more on the developer end, but there is some way an accessibility auditor like me can use. And I would also a quick touch base on voiceover and talkback, the screen readers for iOS and Android. So what I've tried to do is I've tried to cover only the high priorities and mid priorities issues for manual testing. There's obviously 55 success criterias, and we do not have time to go through all of them. But what I've tried to find out is all the main important success criterias, which are on the high end of creating issues where it really blocks the users from getting a full experience. So some of the success criteria you will recognize: 2.1.1 keyboard, 1.4.1 use of color, non-text contrast 1.4.11, 2.4.3 focus order, 2.4.7 focus visible, 4.1.2 name row value, and the status message is the last one. So to let's go through all of them, shall we? So with the 2.1.1 keyboard one, automation, there are some certain automation tools such as browser stack, the wave plugin on the developer end that can help you identify that if certain things are keyboard accessible or not. But only a manual texting can actually find out all the issues and cover with regards to how much of an element is keyboard operable. Typical issues that fall under this category will be, interactive elements do not receive keyboard focus, interactive elements cannot be activated by keyboard alone, a link that does not have href does not receive keyboard focus, drag and drop functionality cannot be operated using keyboard. And certainly this is a bug, the last one is a bug, but in my past experiences there are certain companies or government especially actually says that to raise this under 2.1.1 rather than to identify as a bug. But it depends. I consider this as a bug if such something is not working both using a keyboard and a mouse. Is more of a developer side bug. So I'm just going to try and show you some demo of what I tend to do to find out such issues. Um, so what I tend to do is I try to go through the place using keyboard and try to find out if certain things are receiving keyboard focus and try to find out if they are accessible using keyboard. Very simple. Similar here and very simple here. If I also try to see if I can enter the correct data here, and
Oh,
very simple
Mayo,
in
we're
terms of
still
just
seeing
identifying.
we're still, Mayur, we're still seeing the
Sorry.
presentation rather than what you're doing.
Oops,
That's
sorry.
okay.
Let
Thank
me
you.
find it. Can you see the screen? Sorry, there was a share problem.
Yeah, yeah, we can see it now.
Yeah, so yeah, what I try to do is I try to just um, tab over the website. So, for example, this is one of government example, and you can see when I tap forwards from the no radio button, I am directly going out, and that means this is not receiving keyboard focus. It can be accessed using a mouse, as you can see. So what I tend to do is I just go into inspect and try and find out what is the problem, and you can easily see it's a tab index -1. So what tab index -1 does, it removes certain things from the keyboard focus order, but keeps for the mouse to work for the mouse. So yeah, so those are the things I try to use for keyboard. Keyboard is very straightforward. Is to go through the website using keyboard, uh, try and replicate the same functionality that a normal user can using keyboard, such as drag and drop is a very important one. Links as well. Try and see if you can access the links and so on. Should reshare the screen again. Yep. The other one important one that I tend to use is use of color and non-text contrast. Automation can detect contrast failures, but it cannot go into very detail. To identify visual indicators if they meet the contrast ratios and so on. A tool that I typically tend to use is color contrast analyzer. Typical issues, there are quite a lot of issues that fall under 1.4.1 and 1.4.11. There's a huge list of them, as you can see.
Do you want it, Maya? You need to share your screen again.
Oh, sorry. You cannot see the screen again?
There we go.
All good. Yeah, thanks, Maya.
Yeah, I'm really sorry. It's the first time I'm using Zoom for quite a long time. So.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, so as I tried to say was that use of color 1.4.1 and 1.4.11 non-text contrast. It's very hard to use automation to find out issues. Manual testing is required to identify all the relative issues that falls under the success criteria. A tool that I definitely recommend is color contrast analyzers, and you can see a list of typical issues that over the years that I've found that fail under the success criteria. Certain examples, for example, imagine this is a web page and the blue part is a link, and you can see it relies heavily on color alone to communicate information. The other angle to this would be that a color contrast analyzer, when I use a color contrast analyzer, I pick up a color and I compare the color not with the background but with the surrounding text, and you can see it's also below 321. So there is a leeway within the 1.4.1. It asks that if you have marked up something as a link and it's reliant on color, so the surrounding text, there should be a minimal difference of 321. Over here, it's way below 321. So this sort of also fails under that. So pretty good example how you can use. The other good example will be color relied to communicate a step or a progress. Can you see my screen there again, or is it again a failure? Sorry, can you see it?
Yes.
Yeah. So again, what I tend to use is a color contrast analyzer again. So for example, to check for the colors, this is something that automation tool cannot use, but with it very easily you can use the color contrast analyzer app, and you can plug in and pick the colors and check if they fail. And in this case, for example, what I was testing yesterday, there was a problem with our stepper, and we were using only colors to indicate the progress of the stepper. So this typically was under the fail. Another example would be graphical charts. For example, this when it goes to colorblind user, they will not understand anything, what color is going where and what is which. And pretty good example for something like this, you can use color contrast analyzer, but the best approach will always be to have a different sets of line, um, not tend to rely heavily anyway in the color and give more lucrative options in terms of like the design, so you can best communicate a graphical chart like this. Let me reshare the screen again for something else. Yep. So another issues that I typically tend to pick up on the 1.4.1 non-text contrast is the focus indicator, which is not picked up by the automation tool. So for example, as you can see over here, the focus indicator over here has this orange background, which certainly will fail. But the easy way to check this and reproduce this is to open the thing in the DOM and make sure you're on the summary, which is the component, and try to bring out the same thing feature. And you can see in the style sheet that the color they are using. You can obviously copy paste the color into the CCA, and you can compare that with the background, which is a white background, and you can see it seriously fails under, it's less than 3 to 1. So you can use something like a feature of the DOM to emulate the focus page into this and try and get the colors from the style sheets very easily. So something like this will be also a failure, and that you can you can only find using manual testing. Very similar for this one over here. The text in the background and the color also fails, and you can use the DOM to find out the issues again. You just have to go to Hov and use the focus, and you can see the background color, and you can see over here the color, and you can see the contrast ratio it currently has for this one, this purple one. But if I go to this one, and if I emulate the focus page, I can see it fails under, it's less than 4.5. So a DOM and the CCA both as a mixture is very handy. Sometimes this works on the DOM, sometimes it doesn't. It's totally dependent on how the CSS files are written. But yeah, you can use DOM to find out issues like this. Let me reshare again. Let me know if you can see the screen again.
Yes.
Yes. So another issues, which is, I think this is only testable using keyboard alone, and manual testing is very heavily required, is the 2.4.3 focus order issues. It requires a good amount of manual testing, going through the keyboard, going backwards, forwards with the keyboard to get the same sort of experience uh, what a screen reader user will get. And the tools that I typically recommend to use is keyboard and the accessibility insights extensions. Typical issues, just to know, this is just a good examples of issues that fall under the success criteria, but the typical list of the issues that fall under the success criteria is upwards of like 14 to 15 different issues. But yeah, this is just some good examples for them, and I'm just going to try and show you something on this as well. Yep. Let me know if you can see the screen there. Yeah. So what happens, for example, to test for focus order is very similar to 2.1.1. I just go through the keyboard and I can see, okay, I'm going to main content, and I can see there when I've tapped backwards, there was a hidden element, and it was certainly hidden because I tabbed and nothing happened on the page, and there was no focus indicator anywhere else. But when I tap forwards, it goes here. When I tap backwards, there's certain blank here, and when I go backwards, I'm going to main content. The easiest way to identify this is to use tab stops on accessibility insights. And what it does, it gives you a way to tab stops through the page, and you can certainly see there is a hidden element there. And you can see there's a hidden element. What I will do is just turn off the tab stops, and I'm just going to go back there into the DOM, and I can see that there is a hidden ghost element with the tab index equals to 0. It was a visually hidden element, but because a screen reader will see an element, so this should be hidden, and this will certainly be an issue. So I use keyboard, and I sometimes use accessibility insights tab stops to find out issues. This is a very normal example, but imagine a massive form and imagine a massive step where there are hidden elements that sometimes it becomes from the dev side that they have not technically hide them correctly, or they are receiving keyboard focus, and issues like this can be figured out very easily. Another good examples that I can show you would be something like this. So when I there is no way that the background elements, if you can see the the keyboard focus here, the background elements are receiving keyboard focus, which is incorrect. And when a motor dialog is open, the focus should be always restricted to the motor dialog. But as you can see, background elements are receiving keyboard focus, and this is certainly be a failure. And you can obviously use to go into the DOM and see why this is not receiving keyboard focus, and you can really identify that there is certainly problems with accessibility within this, that they have not marked up or not used correct JavaScripts to use. So a certain good example, let's see an after one, how this one works out. Just trying to, yeah. And as you can see here, I'm restricted with the focus to only this motor dialog. And when I close this motor dialog, my focus goes back to the triggering element, which was the button. So I tend to manually check this stuff out. In a sense, I try to emulate a lived experience of a screen reader users on how it goes. So there are certain issues with this. So for example, if when I close the motor dialog, what if I go to the top of the page and it becomes an issue under 2.4.3? I've seen quite a lot of failures recently on them, but this is a very good, really, really good example for that. I'm going to reshare again.
Just checking on time, Maya. We've got about 5 minutes.
Yep.
Is that
Sure, I
right?
will be very quick on that. So, yeah,
Okay.
another good example will be focus visible. It's you can, as I really showed you, you can use the accessibility insights, the tab stops, to check if there are hidden elements or something that's not receiving keyboard focus. Is it does not, it has a correct focus indicator, like a visible proper focus indicator. And if it's not receiving focus indicator, you can see the CSS DOM and check for any missing outline for the particular interactive element. Looking at the time, I think I will probably skip this, but I was really looking forward. I will probably do it some other time. It was just to how to stop the freeze DOM and to check the issue. But let's go to the very final one, the 4.1.3 status messages. Status messages is a very reoccurring thing. Even the gov.uk has a lot of issues. If you look at gov.uk accessibility statement, there are currently good numbers of issues in terms of status messages open, and it's very hard to test and also very hard to implement. So the best way I recommend is to test this on a mobile. And this is where it gives you as a council an opportunity to introduce mobile testing into your processes. I've seen in the past that mobile testing is never given any attention, but you can use mobile testing in this process. So I've just screen recorded something. So what I did was I went through a page, and I screen recorded on VoiceOver on iOS. I also double checked this on TalkBack, but VoiceOver is very easy to open up on an iOS device, and you can see here.
VoiceOver on Safari. Skip to main content. Describe how and where you lost the insertion point at end. Cap T. Cap T E. E. You have 998 characters remaining.
So that was the example that I was trying to show. So you can see the character counts limit is announced. And this sometimes is very difficult when you're using NVDA to test, because there's a lot of myriads of settings you have to go through before you can really test. So this is an opportunity for as a council to introduce mobile testing and use VoiceOver, which is very easy to set up. And I've actually found out that testing live regions you on mobile gives you a very better opportunity to find out issues and to find out where they exactly happens. Another really good example would be something like this.
VoiceOver on. Please enter your username. Description. Error message. Please provide your username. Text field. Required. Insertion point at end. Password for double. Alert. Face ID authenticated. Continue. Button. Dimmed. Error message. Your username wasn't recognized. Please check your details and try again.
So as you can see, the error message was announced. So sometimes I've certainly found difficulties with NVDA, JAWS, and Dragon. That sometimes it becomes very hard for me to test on desktop certain things like this when the form is very long. This is a very short form, but if the form is very long, it really becomes very difficult. And this is where you can use mobile to actually find out if they're using live region, because if they're using live region on web, and if the same thing is replicated on a mobile device, it will certainly announce. And voiceover is very well compatible with all the arias that are out there, and so voiceover and talkback both. So in my experience, what I found is, 4.1.3, if you're finding difficulties, if you're finding really difficult with screen reader testing, just open up the same thing on mobile and turn on voiceover and talkback, and just it makes it very easier for you over experience. So yeah, I'm excited for any questions. But before I take up any questions, like if there is any future questions, if you have outside of this call, you can obviously reach out to me, and you can also reach out to me in LGD Slack. I'm always very happy to help in this regard. Yeah, thank you, and everyone, a very advanced happy Easter for next week's. Yeah.